Most people who lived on Willow Harbor Road remembered the quiet, how nothing ever really happened and nothing ever changed. It wasn't a perfect neighborhood, but it was predictable. A place where people waved to each other while taking out their trash, where porch lights flicked on at the same time every evening, and where gossip traveled faster than the mailman's truck. That's why what happened to Elena Roswell started bothering people long before they understood it. She was 32, a night shift physical therapist at a rehab center 2 towns over. Lived alone. Paid her bills on time. Didn't bother anyone. The kind of neighbor people barely noticed, except for the fact that she always came home late, sometimes past 1 or 2 in the morning. And every night, without fail, she parked her car beneath the street lamp across from her house. It was the brightest spot on the whole road, since the town hadn't replaced the other lamps in years. That one had survived rainstorms, windstorms, even a small fire from a downed transformer. Everyone trusted that street lamp. That street lamp was also where she first saw the man. Elena didn't mention him at first. Not when it happened the first night, or the second, or even the third. She assumed he was just another night walker, someone who lived on the block, maybe walking a dog or getting air. But the 4th night, that's when she realized something was wrong. Because dogs make noise. Footsteps make noise. People move. This man didn't. She noticed him as soon as she pulled in, standing directly under the streetlight, about 20 feet from where she parked. His clothes were unremarkable, a faded jacket, dark pants, and hands in his pockets. His head hung slightly forward, as if he were looking at the ground. She could tell he wasn't watching her directly, but that didn't make it any less unsettling. She took a breath and shut off her car, told herself not to overthink it, shouldered her bag, and walked up her driveway. She didn't dare look back. Instead, she listened, waiting for footsteps, for movement, for anything. There was nothing, not even the sound of breathing. The next morning, she mentioned him casually to her coworker, Rhea, while they were charting patient notes. Probably a neighbor, Rhea said, shrugging. Old men love staring at nothing. It's like their hobby. Elena laughed it off because it was easier that way. But that night, when she pulled into her street again, she felt the same heaviness in her chest. And he was there again. Same spot, same posture, same silence. Nothing in his stance suggested he even knew she existed. But the fact that he appeared at the exact moment she got home 2 nights in a row was enough for her to quicken her steps and rush inside. She locked the door, checked the deadbolt, and then peeked through the blinds. He was still there, head down, immobile. For a long while, she stood at her window and watched him. He never moved an inch. On the 7th night, she cracked. Before getting out of her car, she gave herself a pep talk. He's just a person. A neighbor. Ask if he's okay. She stepped out of the car and walked toward him, clutching her keys between her fingers. Her voice shook despite her efforts to steady it. Sir, can I help you with something? He didn't respond. Didn't flinch. Do you live around here? His head lifted slowly, like something heavy held it down. He turned toward her, but the shadows swallowed most of his face. The only thing she could make out was the dull gleam of his eyes. Not wide. Not angry. Just empty. Do you need help? She whispered. He finally spoke, but his voice sounded like someone forcing words through a dry throat. I used to. What does that mean? She asked. His jaw twitched, like he wanted to say more, but then he simply lowered his head again and turned his back toward her. That was it. He didn't walk away. He didn't continue the conversation. He just turned away from her and resumed standing there, like her presence didn't matter. Elena hurried inside, slammed the door, and immediately called the non-emergency line. The dispatcher seemed unimpressed. Is he making threats? No. Is he trespassing? No. Has he followed you? No. Then there's nothing we can really do, the dispatcher said with a sigh. Call us back if he tries to approach your home or enter your property. She hung up, furious and terrified. She didn't sleep that night, not after seeing his silhouette still under the lamp at 4 a.m., hours after she'd gone inside. For the next 2 weeks, he continued appearing. Always under the street lamp. Always when she got home. Always in that same downward-facing pose. Elena finally got the courage to ask her neighbors if they recognized him. Most shook their heads and said no. But an older woman named Marjorie looked troubled. "You've seen him too?" Marjorie whispered. "Oh, sweetheart, I wouldn't talk to him anymore if I were you. You know who he is?" "He used to live here," she said cautiously. "But that was... God, it must have been over a decade ago." "Do you know his name?" Elena asked. Marjorie hesitated before answering. "His name was Daniel Hale. He died in 2012. Elena's jaw dropped. "Died? As in really died?" "Yes," Marjorie said. "But people round here, some claim to see him afterward. Standing. Watching. Never speaking. Same way you described." Elena stared at her. "That can't be him. He's real. I spoke to him." Marjorie placed a hand on her arm. "I believe you saw someone. But it wasn't Daniel. That man hasn't been alive for a long time." When Elena pressed for details, Marjorie shook her head. "It's not my place to tell that story. But if I were you, I'd stay inside when it's dark." That night, Elena couldn't focus on anything, not on her dinner, not on her shows, not even on her laundry piled in the corner. Every thought circled back to his face, that empty stare, that frail whisper. "I used to." What did he mean? She didn't understand why, but she needed to know. Even as fear flooded her stomach, curiosity started to gnaw at her. Curiosity and something else, a strange sense of familiarity she couldn't explain. When she looked at her clock and saw 1:43 a.m., her heart sank. She peeked again through the blinds. He was there. Same place. Same angle. But this time, something was different. His head wasn't bowed. He was looking directly at her window. She jolted back from the blinds and clapped a hand over her mouth to muffle her gasp. Her first instinct was to turn off all the lights, hide, and pretend she didn't exist. But another part of her, the part that needed answers, forced her back to the window, slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. When she peeked again, he was still staring straight at her window, head tilted slightly to the side, as though studying her. She whispered to herself, "This is insane." Then she grabbed her phone and snapped a photo. The flash went off, and the man reacted. His head jerked. His body stiffened. His shoulders rose slightly, like someone breathing in sharply. Then, for the first time since she had seen him, he moved. A single step toward her house. Elena dropped her phone. Her breathing collapsed. She stumbled back from the window, shaking uncontrollably. For 15 seconds, she didn't move. Just listened, waiting for footsteps, for knocking, for scraping against her door. There was nothing. She finally forced herself to look again. The man was gone. Vanished from beneath the street lamp. The street was empty. Her chest tightened, and an involuntary shiver crawled down her spine. She didn't sleep at all. When morning came, she retrieved her phone from the floor and opened the photo she took. What she saw made her stomach drop. The man's face was visible now, lit by the flash. Grayish skin. Hollow eyes. Lips slightly parted. But the worst part, the part that made her blood turn to ice, was the background. Behind him, barely visible but unmistakable, was the silhouette of a house. Her house. The angle didn't make sense. The only way her house could appear behind him was if the picture had been taken from the street. She hadn't been outside. She hadn't walked onto the road. She took the photo from her window. Yet the picture wasn't taken from her window at all. Piecing it together, she felt a slow, creeping dread settle over her. Someone else had taken that picture. Someone outside. Someone closer to the man than she was. She told herself it was an error. A reflection. Some kind of glitch. But deep down she knew. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had already been outside her window that night. And they were standing closer to the man than she ever had. Elena sat on the edge of her bed for nearly an hour, just staring at that photo. Every time she tried to come up with a normal explanation, she hit the same brick wall. There was no realistic angle where her house could have appeared behind the man unless the camera had been outside, pointing toward her. But she knew she hadn't stepped outside. And she certainly hadn't handed her phone to anyone. At 7:14 a.m., she finally broke her silence and called the police again. This time, She didn't downplay anything. "There's someone stalking me," she said, voice trembling. "A man who's been standing outside my house at night. I have a photo. Something's wrong with it. I can't explain it, but it's not normal." The dispatcher asked if the man had threatened her.
"He didn't have to," she snapped.
"Just send someone." Within 20 minutes, a patrol car appeared. 2 officers came to the door, Officer Hale, a younger guy with tired eyes, and Officer Morgan, a woman who looked like she'd seen enough night shifts for a lifetime. They examined the picture, brows furrowing. Officer Morgan finally said, "You said you took this from inside your house?" "Yes." "And you're sure you didn't step outside?" "I'm positive. Look at the angle. There's no way." Morgan nodded. "Yeah, you're right. This looks like it was taken from the street." Officer Hale glanced at her. "You said this man appears every night?" "Yes." "And he speaks?" "He's spoken once," Elena whispered. "He said, 'I used to.'" "Used to what?" "I don't know. That's all he said." Hale pursed his lips.
"All right.
"We'll check the street and surrounding houses. Maybe someone else is involved." "Someone else?" Elena echoed. "That's what I'm worried about," Morgan said. "This picture doesn't add up. Somebody else had to be near him when this was taken." It wasn't reassuring. They left after taking the picture's metadata and promising extra patrols at night. But Elena didn't feel safer. Not when she sat alone in her living room afterward, replaying the last few nights over and over. Because if someone else had been out there, why didn't she hear them? Why didn't the man react until after the flash? And why did it feel like the street had been watching her, not the other way around? That afternoon, she decided she needed answers from the source Marjorie, the old woman who had mentioned Daniel Hale. She knocked on her door just after noon. Marjorie answered slowly, wearing an apron dusted with flour. "Elena," she said. "You look pale. Everything all right?" "No," Elena admitted. "Marjorie, I need to know more. About Daniel. About what happened to him." Marjorie's face tightened, as if she'd been expecting this. "Come in," she said quietly. The house smelled like warm bread and laundry detergent. Old-fashioned, safe. The kind of place where a nightmare really shouldn't exist. But as they sat at the dining table, Marjorie's expression dimmed. "Daniel was troubled," she began. "He lived with his mother. Sweet boy when he was younger, but he changed. Became withdrawn. Paranoid. Said he heard things at night. Saw people watching him." Elena's stomach knotted. Watching him how? From across the street. Standing under the street lamp. Elena's breath caught. Marjorie nodded. Same spot. Same time of night. He said the same thing. There was someone waiting for him. Someone staring. "And nobody else saw this person?" "No one," Marjorie said. But Daniel insisted. Said the man followed him everywhere. Even inside his dreams. Elena swallowed hard. What happened to him? Marjorie hesitated. His mother found him one morning. In the house. He'd passed in his sleep, they said. Natural causes. But he was only 28. Too young for natural causes. Elena felt cold seep into her fingertips. "What did he look like?" she whispered. Marjorie blinked. "What do you mean?" "When he died. What did he look like?" "I don't know," Marjorie said. "I didn't see him. But the obituary had a picture." She shuffled to a drawer and pulled out an old newspaper clipping, yellowed at the edges. On it was a photo of a young man with tired eyes, short dark hair, and a solemn expression. It was him. The man from outside. Exactly the same face, just younger and healthier. Elena's voice cracked. "Marjorie, that's him. That's the man who keeps standing outside my house." Marjorie's hands began to shake. "Elena, dear, that man hasn't been alive for 12 years. That night, Elena didn't go to work. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that hollow stare from the picture. She paced her living room, jumped at sounds from the plumbing, and kept checking the blinds even though it was still daylight. When the sun finally dipped behind the trees, she froze in the hallway. Her house felt wrong. Silent in a way silence shouldn't feel. Thick. Pressed against her skin. She peeked through the blinds. Nobody. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Maybe the police scared him off. Maybe he wouldn't come back. But then her phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. Her blood chilled as she opened it. A single photo. A dark image, blurry, grainy. She tapped to expand. And her heart nearly stopped. It was her.
Sleeping.
Her hair, her blanket, her bedroom window faintly visible behind her. The angle was unmistakable. It was taken from inside her room. Elena staggered backward, gasping so hard she couldn't breathe. Another buzz. Another message. Did you miss me? She dropped her phone. Panic exploded in her chest. She bolted to her bedroom, threw open the closet, checked behind the curtains, under the bed, everywhere. Her house felt too quiet,
Too still.
as if someone was holding their breath. Finally, hands trembling, she grabbed a knife from her kitchen drawer and ran to every window in the house, flipping lights on, searching desperately for movement. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. Then 10. Nothing. Just when she began convincing herself she was having some kind of breakdown, a soft knock echoed through the hallway. Not from the front door. Not from the back door. From inside the house. Her knees nearly buckled. The sound came again, 3 gentle taps coming from beneath her staircase. Her breath froze. Because there was a small, locked storage door under the stairs. A door she had never opened. A door she assumed led to nothing important.
Tap. 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 Slow.
Patient. Like someone asking permission. Elena pressed herself against the wall, knife trembling in her hand. Every instinct told her to run, to scream, to flee out the front door. But something rooted her in place. Something colder than fear. A voice came from the other side of the door.
Soft.
Male. Rasped dry, like old leaves brushing against concrete. Elena, it whispered. Her heart lurched violently. It wasn't the man from the street. This voice was different. Lower. Closer.
Wrong.
She stumbled backward, breath hitching, unable to speak.
Tap. Tap. Tap.
Elena, the voice said again. I know you're awake. She choked on her own breath, scrambling toward the front door.
But then,
her phone buzzed again. A new message. Don't answer him. She turned slowly, horrified. Because that meant someone else was watching. Someone other than whatever was under her stairs. Then another message. I'm still outside. Don't let him out. Elena felt her sanity warp. There were 2 of them.
2 men.
One inside her house, and one outside. And neither explanation made any sense. Her pulse pounded so loud, she could barely hear anything else. Another tap, louder this time. Then the doorknob under the stairs rattled. Elena, the voice hissed, now impatient. Let me out. She bolted out the front door and into the cold night air, sobbing. But when she looked toward the street lamp, the man who always stood there, the man with the empty eyes, the man she thought was the only threat, he wasn't there. The space under the streetlight was empty. And for the first time since she moved into the neighborhood, Elena realized something she wished she hadn't. He didn't come every night because he was haunting her. He came every night because he was warning her. Elena ran halfway down the street before she realized she had nowhere to go. She didn't know her neighbors well enough to bang on their doors at night, and the police hadn't taken her seriously the first 2 times. Her breaths came in frantic bursts, her fingers shaking as she dialed 911 again. When the dispatcher answered, Elena could barely speak. There's someone in my house. Someone was inside the walls or under the stairs. I don't know what's going on. Please send someone. The dispatcher tried to keep her calm, asking questions she couldn't answer. Was the intruder armed? How did they get in? Was she injured? Elena didn't know any of it. All she knew was what she'd heard. And what she'd read on the phone. Don't answer him. I'm still outside. Don't let him out. Her blood ran cold every time the messages replayed in her mind. She kept staring toward the street lamp, expecting the man to reappear at any second. But the sidewalk was empty. The street, silent. The house behind her, looming with a dark stillness she'd never noticed before. The dispatcher told her to stay somewhere safe until officers arrived. Elena ended the call and backed farther away from the house, putting as much distance as she could between herself and whatever was inside it. The squad car arrived in 4 minutes. 2 different officers, this time Officer Wells and Sergeant Reed. Both stepped out with hands near their holsters. Elena ran to meet them. "He was inside the house," she blurted. "Someone was knocking under the stairs. He said my name. He said to let him out." Sergeant Reed raised a hand. "Slow down. Is anyone else inside the home with you?" "I live alone," Elena said. "No one should have been there." Wells shot Reed a look, then immediately moved toward the door. "We're going in," Reed said. "Stay by the car." But Elena grabbed his sleeve. "There's another man," she whispered. "Outside. He's been watching me every night." "Where?" Elena pointed to the street lamp. But when Reed walked over to check, he found nothing. No footprints. No sign anyone had been standing there. Just cold pavement and a broken patch of asphalt. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "it's late. It's dark. You've had a scare. People can't imagine shapes." "I didn't imagine him," she snapped. "He spoke to me. He stood there every single night." Reed didn't argue, but she could tell he didn't believe her. They approached the house with flashlights drawn. Elena stayed by the police car, hugging herself, heart pounding uncontrollably. Through the open door, she heard the officers calling out commands. "Police! If anyone's inside, make yourself known." The house swallowed their voices. A few minutes passed. Silence. Then, a sharp bang echoed from inside the house. Elena flinched, choking on a scream. Another bang, louder. She gripped the side of the car as panic surged through her. After what felt like an eternity, both officers reemerged. Wells looked shaken. Reed's jaw was tense. "We didn't find anyone," he said. Elena's vision blurred.
No.
"No, that's impossible." "But," Wells added, "the panel on the storage door under your stairs, someone tore at it from the inside." Elena's stomach twisted so hard, she thought she might collapse. "What do you mean, tore at it?" "There are scratch marks," he said quietly. "Deep ones.
Fresh.
Something or someone clawed at it. But the space behind that door is small. Very small." Elena felt faint. Reed stepped closer. "We checked everywhere. Your attic, basement, all closets, all rooms. There's no one in the house now." He paused. "But someone might have been there earlier tonight." She balled her fists. "So what do I do? Just go back inside? Pretend nothing happened?" Wells glanced at Reed. "We can't force you to stay, but we recommend you spend the night somewhere else while we file a report." She didn't need convincing. She didn't want to step foot inside that house again. Not tonight. Not ever. Elena drove to the only place she could think of at that hour, a small 24-hour diner along a state road. She sat in a booth, staring at a cup of coffee. She was too nauseous to drink. What terrified her most wasn't the voice under the stairs. It wasn't the knocks. It wasn't even the picture someone took of her sleeping. It was the final text message, the one she hadn't shown the police. "I'm still outside." Meaning the man with the hollow eyes wasn't the one beneath the stairs. There were 2 presences haunting her life. One inside, one outside, and each seemed aware of the other. Elena leaned her head into her hands. For the first time, she considered the unthinkable. What if the man outside, the one she'd feared for days, wasn't the threat at all? What if he wasn't trying to watch her? What if he was trying to protect her? Around 3 a.m., she got a call from an unknown number. Her breath caught. The voice on the other end was male.
Soft.
Tired. Familiar. "Elena," he said. "Please don't go home." Her heart nearly stopped. She recognized the voice. It was him. The man who stood under the street lamp. How did you get this number?" she whispered. "You need to listen," he said. "The house isn't safe. You're not alone in there. You never were." She pressed her hand to her forehead, shaking violently. "What do you want from me?" "To keep you alive." Her throat tightened. "I don't understand." "You will," he said. "But you have to hear the truth. And you won't believe it if it doesn't come from me. So please meet me in a public place. Somewhere with lights. Elena's pulse hammered painfully.
No.
I'm not meeting you. You already have, he said quietly. Her blood froze. She looked up instinctively, scanning the diner. A man sat 2 booths down. Hood up. Head lowered. Hands folded on the table. He wasn't looking at her. He wasn't moving at all. Yet something told her he'd been watching her since she walked in. The phone whispered, "Turn around." Elena lowered the phone slowly. And when she turned her head just slightly to the right, the man in the hoodie lifted his face. Pale skin. Sunken eyes. That same sorrowful expression she'd seen under the street lamp. It was him. Her stalker. Her ghost. Her warning. He raised his hand, slowly, cautiously, as if trying not to scare her. "I'm sorry," he whispered, loud enough for her to hear through the quiet diner. "I didn't mean to frighten you. But you need to know what's inside your house." Elena's breaths came sharp and uneven. "What are you?" she whispered. He swallowed. And then he said something that made her entire world tilt sideways. "I'm the last person who lived there." Elena's voice cracked. "Daniel Hale?" He nodded. "I tried to leave," he said. "But not everything in that house lets go." Her skin prickled. Her stomach dropped into a hollow pit. "What's under the stairs?" she whispered. Daniel's face crumpled with a grief so deep it barely looked human. "My mother didn't die peacefully," he said. Elena felt her throat close. "What happened to her?" He shook his head slowly. "She never left the house. I didn't either. But that thing under the stairs." He leaned forward, voice breaking. "That's what killed us." Elena's heart stopped cold. Daniel lowered his voice to a trembling whisper. "You let it out." When the officers reached the base of the staircase, their radios crackled with bursts of static, sharp, almost electrical. One of them muttered that something didn't feel right. Another called Chris's name, but the sound felt swallowed by the house. Like the walls refused to carry it. Upstairs, the attic door stood wide open. They moved slowly, guns drawn, lights slicing through the dusty dark. The ladder groaned under their weight as they climbed. And when the first officer poked his head up into the attic, he froze. The air up there was wrong, thick, hot, almost vibrating with pressure. A single bulb swayed overhead, though nothing had touched it. And there was Chris. He was standing in the center of the attic, knees bent, body trembling slightly like he was trying to stand still but couldn't. His eyes were unfocused, staring past the officers like he was trapped in some internal tunnel. But the worst part, the part that made one of the officers whisper a curse, was the man standing behind him. Not touching him, just standing impossibly close, his head tilted, as if listening to something only he could hear. No breathing. No movement. No features, really just the outline of a man with a shape too still to be living. But the officers could see the silhouette. And Chris didn't react to it at all. When the first officer stepped up into the attic, the figure drifted back. Not walked, drifted. As if it weighed nothing. As if gravity didn't apply to it. The officer dragged Chris toward the ladder, shouting for backup. Chris stumbled like his legs belonged to someone else. The moment they pulled him down, the attic bulb burst behind them, shattering the silence and pitching everything into darkness. By the time backup arrived, the attic was empty, cold, dust on the floor undisturbed, as if no one had been up there in years. Chris wouldn't speak for hours. Not until he was sitting in the back of the ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, eyes hollow. He didn't look like someone who had just survived something terrible. He looked like someone who understood something no human should ever understand. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. He wanted me to let him in completely. No one knew what that meant. Not the officers, not the EMT, not the neighbors watching from their doorways. But Chris knew. And whatever he meant by let him in, it wasn't physical. It wasn't about entering the house. It was about entering him. The police insisted someone had broken in and hidden inside the walls or attic. They took statements, dusted for prints, but nothing added up. No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the snow except Chris's and the officers'. No shadows caught on the neighbors' cameras even though they checked them 3 times. But Chris didn't argue. He didn't fight their explanations. He didn't even tell them about the voice he'd heard whispering through the vents, or the way the figure moved without sound, or the feeling in his chest the second that presence stepped out of the bedroom doorway, like something had recognized him, loved him, claimed him. He kept all of that to himself. The next day, he packed his things and moved out. But here's the part that unsettled everyone who learned what really happened. 2 weeks later, the family who bought the house called the police to report something strange. They said that every night, around 3 a.m., the attic light would turn on by itself. And their daughter kept telling them about the quiet man she sometimes saw standing at the top of the stairs. They thought she was sleepwalking, or imagining things. Until the mother snapped a photo in the hallway mirror at night, trying to catch what her daughter claimed she saw. She expected to see nothing. Instead, she caught the faint outline of a tall, dark figure standing just behind her shoulder. Perfectly still, perfectly silent. Only visible in the reflection. When the police asked Chris if he knew anything about this, he said only one thing. He'll keep coming back until he finds the person he wants. They asked him who that person was. Chris didn't answer. He didn't have to, because the truth was simple. The presence in that house wasn't tied to the building. It wasn't tied to a room, a vent, or a mirror. It was tied to him, and it was still following him. People who lived in the apartment under Chris reported heavy footsteps pacing his living room at night, even when he was gone. He started waking up to find his closet door wide open when he swore he'd closed it. Neighbors said they sometimes heard 2 sets of footsteps coming from his place, echoing one after the other. Always one step behind. Always almost touching. He stopped answering phone calls. Stopped going to work. Stopped sleeping. 3 months after he moved, his landlord opened the unit for inspection. Everything inside was untouched. His bed neatly made. His clothes folded. Kitchen spotless. But the landlord found all the doors open. Every single one. Closet doors.
Cabinets.
Bathroom doors. The bedroom door hanging crooked on a hinge. Even the door to the crawl space above the hallway, something no one had touched in years. All wide open.
Chris was gone.
No note. No sign of struggle. No trace of where he went. But wedged in the frame of the open crawlspace door was a single, fresh fingerprint. Not Chris's. Not the landlord's. A fingerprint belonging to no one in any database. Long, thin. Almost elegant. And when the police dusted the rest of the apartment, they found the same print everywhere. On the walls, as if hands had been pressed flat against them. On the ceiling, as if someone had been crawling across it. On the inside of the bedroom closet, clustered around the edges, as if someone had been gripping it from the inside. Waiting. Waiting for Chris to open the door. Waiting for him to come back. Waiting for him like he always had. Because the man didn't just want to get inside the house. He wanted to get inside him. And now, it's believed he finally did. Wherever Chris is now, if he's still alive, no one knows. But every few months, someone new calls in a sighting. A neighbor who swears they saw a tall man standing unnaturally close behind someone in a window. A jogger who says a figure was following them home silently for blocks. Security cameras catching a shape that looks like a person until it moves in ways a person shouldn't be able to. No one can prove it's the same presence. But if you've ever walked alone at night and felt someone too close behind you, if you've ever closed a door and wondered why it felt like someone on the other side wanted it open, if you've ever seen a shadow that seemed to lean closer when you looked away, maybe it isn't your imagination. Maybe it's him. Because once he chooses someone, he always comes back. And he might already be standing closer than you think. If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling what kind of horror story you want next.